Hey guys, welcome once again. My name is Leboham Mafa, and this is the bigger picture. Today we have got Ntate Solly Moeng. Solly Moeng is the brand specialist. He's the MD for Don Valley, a senior consultant there. Mr. Moeng, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We are
Thank
pleased
you.
to have
Thank
you
you.
here.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. No, thanks very much for making time. Look, one of the things that maybe I don't know you remember. I think you and I have been talking now about some of the
Mm.
issues in South Africa for
Yeah.
almost close to
You
about
used to fight
8 years
with
now.
me. So I don't know if I'm in
Yeah, we
friendly territory here. If I'm going to be eaten alive.
well, you can you can rest assured that this is a friendly territory.
No, it's
You're
It's
gonna walk
fine.
out of here alive.
We come
But
from a
yeah,
country of many
there's been
difficult
so
and
much.
uncomfortable conversations. Sorry.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think today's discussion is not going to be any different. Uh,
Right.
there has been so many things going on in the country. I'm
Hmm.
sure you would have heard, and I know that you're currently not in the country, somewhere in Switzerland. Uh,
Hmm.
there has been a Phala Phala saga, which
Right.
involves the president. There's greylisting, a threat of greylisting for us as a
Hmm.
country. There
Hmm.
is the Section 89 against the president as a result of Phala Phala incident.
Right.
And recently, we recently heard that the Minister of Finance um is alleged to have tried to get his hand in a cookie jar, so to speak.
Okay.
And so these are all the issues that are currently taking place in South Africa, Mr. Moeng,
Hmm.
just to bring you up to speed with the developments in the country. But maybe where one would like to start this conversation from would be from the IPSOS, the recent IPSOS results.
Hmm.
The results, I think they came out last week.
Right.
They put African National Congress squarely below 50% mark in
Hmm.
terms of the mood of the nation currently. Uh,
Right.
Yet there is no, it doesn't appear, the opposition doesn't appear to be gaining ground either.
Hmm.
Perhaps can you tell us why do you think the opposition is struggling to gain traction even when the ANC is continuously losing ground?
But I think that because the only other time when South Africa was not governed, I always say misgoverned by the ANC, it was apartheid. It was a really bad space for black people to be at. And I think, when people cannot imagine, a lot of people cannot imagine a South Africa that is not with the ANC on top of it. The only other one they know is with apartheid. So it's easy, therefore, for many ANC ministers, and I know it happens, to say, look, if you take us out of power, apartheid will return. And the DA has got all these, how to say, these shovels over its head about racism, about not being able to retain black leaders, about the culture there not being for the emancipation, especially economic emancipation of black people, etc. And I mean, some of the stuff is said by people who really obviously benefit from that kind of thing. I don't think that the ANC want to return or the DA wants to return apartheid to South Africa, and they cannot. Nobody can return apartheid. It's impossible. Even if the ANC wanted to, they can't. If you
Absolutely.
think of all the pieces of legislation that have been put in place since the end of apartheid, no one can bring it back. So the ANC is still emotionally uh, a party that a lot of people are invested in. They are disappointed in. They would like, even people who are angry at the ANC would like the ANC to succeed. People would like to see Ramaphosa succeed because it's hard for them to imagine somebody else in power. And the other political parties either tend to be a one party, or sort of one issue political party, or they're not doing sufficient work to really appeal to the core of what touches many South Africans, especially the majority black people. So the ANC will continue to be the one that's able to tell amazing whether true or not, anti-apartheid struggle songs. They will sing, they will
About
dance, they will tell
stories,
stories.
yeah.
People will tell about stories about what they survived in the trenches. No other party can do that. So it's really, really from an emotional point of view, it's really hard to fight against the ANC. But it's also not surprising that the ANC's numbers are gradually coming down. I think on one hand, it's really up to the opposition parties to make a more how to say successful appeal to especially an emotional appeal to South Africans to move away from the ANC. Because we've seen that a lot of people would rather not vote than vote for, say, the DA. So there's all these polls are looking at mostly people who vote. They don't look at people who. There's a huge and a growing number of people who are saying, why must we keep voting? And I think it would be interesting to see how big the chunk is and what its intention or what it would take to convince it to register and to vote.
to, oh, absolutely. And you know what you say, in a way, tallies with one of the results from the same study, IPSOS study, that about 30% of South Africans currently reject DA outright. And I think about 29% IFP, EFF and IFP at about
Right.
28% squarely. And in that metric, ANC is the least rejected party.
Yeah, that's surprising. It's very, very surprising, especially given that, I mean, the ANC is a party that's loading it over South Africa's affairs. Everything that we are in, all the trouble, at least from an economic point of view, it's because of the ANC. One has to admit the ANC, because it's divided, it's not able to agree on one political policy, what economic policy to propose to South Africans, because they can't agree whether we put it this way or that way, and that makes it really, really hard. If you go to KZN or you go to Mpumalanga, ANC, or even Eastern Cape ANC, people agree on the same things. Zuma is no longer in power, but
It's still a big
he's
factor.
almost, yeah, he's still a big factor in KZN. So while the party in power is not able to be cleared on sending messages that are not conflicting, it makes it really hard for the rest of South Africans to know which way the country is going. Even for the investor community, we don't know whether the ANC is going to. It's just a matter of removing Ramaphosa, and then the National Reserve, the South African Reserve Bank, will be nationalized, and all other policies that don't make sense, that might make sense to the ANC, but not for the economic well-being of South Africa. We can't have a country relying on the well-being and the health of one man. It's not good. We need to have
Absolutely
systems
not.
that ensure that no matter how angry you are, you can't come in here and just mess up
Mess
things
up
for
with the
everybody
system.
else.
Oh, absolutely. When you raise President Zuma's former President Zuma's issue, one what we or one issue that came up yesterday, and I'm glad you are here. The issue that came up yesterday with between in the discussion we had with Ms. Harris from IPSOS is that KwaZulu Natal doesn't appear to be giving to the ANC as much electoral support as Gauteng. And one wonders, why is President Zuma still having so much sway, so to speak, to lead us in KwaZulu Natal and some within the ANC elsewhere? Why is he so much revered still, regardless of what the numbers are saying? I mean, political game is about numbers at the end of the day. Why do you think that is still the case?
Well, I mean, I think you should also ask another question. Why is there a biggest number of political assassinations in KZN? People fear Zuma. It's not just about the emotional. People don't necessarily laugh. People are afraid. Even I will not just go to Durban and say, hello, my name is Solly Moeng, I'm in Durban. I would be stupid to do that. I'd go there and then do whatever I do and then come out and say,
This,
I've just been to Durban. Yeah, in Durban, so there's this fear. I mean, we don't know how many weapons, Kalashnikovs, Pangas, all sorts of weaponry is hidden in KZN all over the place. And if you easily oppose the mainstream politics, which is very much linked or aligned to Tsuzuma, your life is not safe in KZN. So I don't think that it would be politically intelligent for anyone to stand up without sufficient protection in KZN and oppose the Zuma faction, because it's almost like it's a cabal that even people I know. I have friends in business in KZN, they'll tell you that you don't get a tender in Durban without some kind of blessing from the Zuma people. Though they control the economy, they control where the money goes, they control everything. Sihle Zikalala had to be careful. Even, I mean, I see people say he was with Ramaphosa. That man, many times, actually, he did things that supported Zuma. He was against Zuma's arrest last year, but they forget that he had to remember which side of his bread is buttered. And as premier, his bread was buttered both in Pretoria and in Kandla.
Yeah, and when you say that, look, it brings sort of sense to what his. I think this was after he has resigned. He had resigned as a
Right,
premier.
right,
I think
right.
he felt obliged to once again reassure President Zuma that he has always been with President Zuma, which personally I did not understand why that was necessary, but
Right.
nonetheless, on his personal volition, he
Mhm.
decided to say, I've always been with President Zuma. So what you're saying right now about the influence that President Zuma still have in the province sort of tallies with the mood, political mood in that particular province.
Yeah,
But
just one more point. I don't think that the new premier of the the KZN would have, announced his what is it,
it's
his
her,
MECs, his
yes.
cabinet, cabinet rather, without some form of acknowledgement from Zuma's cabinet. Zuma is very strong. People underestimate the strength of Zuma, and I don't think that anybody who runs KZN, even though they are appointed with the blessing of the president at national, they know that they cannot stand against Zuma. They would be in trouble, and I'm sure that even Sitle Zekala, knowing that he is going to continue living in KZN, he needs to know that the other guys, the Zuma guys, are assured that he's not their enemy.
Wow, that's very interesting. Let's move. Let's move
Okay,
slightly away from the KwaZulu-Natal politics,
right.
maybe back to the national politics.
Mhm.
In particular, I mean, would like to touch on Phala Phala issue. I think it's about 3 months now in the making.
Right.
The saga doesn't seem to be dying down.
Mhm.
The president has decided or had sort of, I don't know, maybe tried to wish it away and kept silence, but it keeps coming back. What do you think that what are the implications on his personal brand as Ramaphosa?
No, it's bad. Well, Ramaphosa is always also trying to wish Marikana away. It's not going away. It's not going to go anywhere. I think that, in Reputation 101, the first rule is if something has happened in your space, in your brand space, acknowledge it as early as possible. The aim of it is so that you own it and you control the narrative around the topic. When the minute the narrative gets taken over by other people, you have no control. People say all sorts of things. You're on the back foot all the time. If I were Ramaphosa's advisor, I would have said, just tell the truth. Maybe the truth is ghastly for us, I mean, obviously, he wouldn't be running away as he is running away if there was not much to fear. Obviously there's something we're not knowing, and the point is, the more he keeps running away, the more he keeps refusing to talk about it, the more room it leaves for speculation. Some of it might be true, some of it might not be true, but he's giving a cake on a platter to his political enemies. They're going to keep and what it also does to him is that he no longer has the moral high ground to say to anybody, what you're doing is wrong, because when he points one finger at anyone, all the other fingers are pointing at him. He's that kind of president. He can't say you're wrong to anybody because he's not. He's also wrong on so many areas. I think it was a lost opportunity for him, and he's going to continue hanging over his head, just like Marikana is hanging over his head. He no longer has. You can't speak from a moral high ground to anybody, whether in the ANC or outside the ANC.
You know, I as 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 a result of this Phala Phala, we have seen the opposition literally trying to find just about anything they can throw at him
Right.
just to make meat out of it. And
Hmm.
one of those things that the opposition have tried, in fact, I think it's one of two.
Hmm.
There's a section 89 of the
Hmm.
Constitution which will be investigating whether the president was involved in any wrongdoing.
Right.
And there's a suggestion to go for motion of no confidence, which is and has sort of divided the opposition along these two possible
Right.
approaches. But I want to start with the Section 89. From the Section 89 point of view, there has been 4 names that have been proposed as one of them will lead this process. One of the curious names is Justice Moeng. And you
Right.
would know that recently Justice Moeng has been in the news given his presidential aspiration. What do you think his inclusion or likely involvement in that process will mean for that process itself? How credible will that process be if it happens to be led by Chief Justice Moeng?
Well, the thing is, former Chief Justice Moeng has not himself said he's standing for presidency. We've had other people say this on his behalf. I think he too has a responsibility. He was probably just testing or using other people to test the mood or the response of the nation to that kind of suggestion. But I think he needs to come out as soon as possible at some point and say whether or not he has political presidential ambitions. Until he does so, it becomes problematic for him to be included as somebody who might have to lead a process to investigate Ramaphosa, because then that process obviously would be suspected of being led in a biased way by somebody who himself aims to become president of South Africa. And of course, there's a whole different discussion about whether or not, as a former Chief Justice, he can stand for political office. But he needs to stand up, because the more he allows this thing to go on, the more he's leaving space for speculation that might not be good for his own name. That might not be good for his own name.
Definitely. And we are on this issue. As I said earlier, the opposition appear not to be divided along these two approaches. I mean, Democratic Alliance is leaning more towards the Section 89, while the EFF and others are sort of pushing hard for the motion of no confidence. What do you think this division is doing to the strength or to the might of opposition in holding the president accountable?
Well, on the one hand, we have elections coming up in less than 15 months, I think, or in less than 24 months,
about
rather.
19 months or so.
Correct, yes. And each one of these has got ambitions to run, to be the leader, to be the shining light. I don't know if they're going to grow a lot further than they are at right now. But in favor of the DA's approach, you can't keep doing things over and over again the same way and expect different outcomes. We know that Ramaphosa, if there's a motion of no confidence against the president, most ANC MPs are not going to vote again, to remove Ramaphosa. It's not going to happen. So I think the EFF is wasting time. They will do it just for the record's sake. Yeah, there's been a motion, but it didn't pass. I think what the DA is doing is trying something different that has not been tried before. The only thing about it is that it's going to take time. By the time they finish, it'll probably be after the elections next in 2024. So either way, South Africa is messed up. I mean, political parties, obviously, they're doing two things. One is for their own survival. Sometimes they say really stupid things, like Malema recently, putting Arthur Fraser and former President Mbeki in the same basket.
The same boat.
I don't have much respect for Mbeki, but I don't think Mbeki would do that. I don't think so. I don't think Mbeki would go into with Fraser into that kind of nonsensical planning. Okay, so I don't know where
the motivation that was given for Mbeki to do that didn't really make much sense to any reasonable person.
Yeah. But Mbeki wouldn't do that. I mean, maybe he would, but not with Arthur Fraser. Let me put it this way. Okay, so I don't know why Malema said this. Maybe he just wanted to gain he knows that he says stuff, sometimes really ridiculous stuff, and the next thing he's on the front line of newspapers that maybe does something nice to his ego. I think he writes on that. But look, Ramaphosa really needs to take control of the situation around Phala Phala because it's getting out of hand. And the long even if any investigation is protracted, it still means that over a long period of time there'll be shadows hanging over his head, and that's not good for the president of South Africa because
Definitely.
he's the CEO of South Africa
Of the
Inc. And
country.
all these shadows, if he's no different from his predecessor, it means South Africa is hurting over and over and for a longer period than we all hoped it would be.
Oh, I think you hit the nail on the head there. But you know, there's a funny or maybe a strange side to this story.
Hmm.
Despite everything, President Ramaphosa still appeared to be the most trusted leader in the country.
Right.
I think with about 20-30% margin between him
Hmm.
and the nearest leader.
Hmm.
Can you perhaps try to make it sense for us? Why is
Well, Becky Cele, I'm going to say something outrageous, but just for comparison's sake, Becky Cele said something that unacceptable, of course, following the rape of 8 women, gang rape. She said to one woman, "You at least were raped by one person." Of course, nobody should be raped. It's not acceptable and all that. But Ramaphosa is seen as that one person who is if okay, maybe the better comparison is if you have a bucket filled with really dirty white shirts, Ramaphosa is the least dirty of them all. He's not clean, he's just the least dirty of them all. Okay, and you have to go to that interview, you say, God, what shade am I going to wear? You're going to
this
wear the
one?
Ramaphosa one because the other one is just so dirty. So I mean, but the other thing is the emotional thing. South Africans really want Ramaphosa to succeed. Many people can still not believe that this man could be the man that he has become since he became president. And it's really hurtful for them. And they fear those people who said, I've lost friends who said, but this is the last hope for South Africa. I don't want my country to have one man or one woman as its last hope. We must have institutional integrity and strength so that the country doesn't have to rely on me being in good health or doing the right thing or the wrong thing. The institutions should defend South Africa, not individuals. So Ramaphosa is riding that wave, but even that wave is getting weaker and weaker and weaker. I know people who gave Ramaphosa money before 2017, CR 2017. They're not going to give him that money anymore. They've lost hope in him entirely, and he knows it. So by the time we get to 2024, he's going to have less friends than he has right now. He had 2 weeks ago. So South Africans want Ramaphosa to succeed, but he has missed too many opportunities to prove that he's a different man than Zuma, or he's that man that many had hoped would become the president after Mandela instead of Mbeki. He's lost so much reputational credit since he became president. I have no idea what's going to happen in December, and I have no idea what's going to happen in 2014. Obviously, again, for many people, they would rather have the ANC being led by Ramaphosa to the 2024
True.
electoral Armageddon than to have somebody else appointed by Zuma. Then the Armageddon would come earlier.
Do you think it's late though? Do you think the ship has sailed for President Ramaphosa to start turning things around?
Look, because he's the least dirty shirt, people would rather wear him to the interview. Look, I speak to a lot of people. I'm sure as you do. I would rather not have the RET faction appointing a president because it's going to be appointed on emotion. You can't have angry people running a country as complex as South Africa. You need people who are balanced, who are emotionally mature, who don't have chips on their shoulders, who to some extent at least think South Africa, not ANC. Even though Ramaphosa has made it clear that he'd rather be seen as a weak South African president than one under whom the ANC is going to split. So it's really, South Africa is in a really, really, really painful place because it's really being held hostage by the ANC, by Ramaphosa, where they want him to succeed. They don't want him to fail, but they'd rather have the ANC fail at this stage. At this stage, I mean, all those polls that tell us what's going to happen in 2024 do not take into account the new players. There will be new players into the political field, and the extent to which they will manage to gain ground is yet to be seen.
Fascinating. I'm saying this because in my head, seated here, I'm thinking how much relatable or relatability plays into Ramaphosa still being the most preferred and trusted leader, and how much less so are other leaders, and how important is relatability when we talk political leadership, especially
Well,
as a face of the party.
well, Ramaphosa, as I said earlier, he's the cleaner shed
Yeah,
of all of the dirty ones. And most South Africans know that the ANC is
but
divided
now
into.
I'm talking broadly across the political
Yeah, yeah,
spectrum. Yes,
yeah. So most people know that the ANC is split broadly into two factions: the RT factions. Some people
and
call it the
Ramaphosa.
progressive or the Ramaphosa
Yes,
faction. And to most people, I think, who analyze these things, who read, who ask all the questions, many people don't, unfortunately, in South Africa. They just go on emotion. But I think to the people who are really analyzing the situation, they think that it's best to have a President Ramaphosa because there's no other name on his faction side who's going to oppose him. I think the Ramaphosa faction will probably position and stand behind Ramaphosa as candidate for the presidency. The other guys who are opposing Ramaphosa are probably going to come up blessed by the RET faction, which is untrusted. We wouldn't be surprised. Now, Asa Makashule has no chance of returning as things stand. Who knows? They might say, okay, let's bring in interim president Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. Anything is possible because anyway, whoever becomes president of the ANC in December, if it's on Ramaphosa, will be an interim president until the next elections. When we get to the next elections, they might choose somebody else. So we don't know what the story is going to be like.
it's gonna. Oh well, uh, there are so many pieces. I mean, yesterday Miss Harris I think made a very interesting analogy. Said political landscape by its very nature it's very fluid.
Right.
It's dynamic. It changes from time to time, and I think the ANC is a classic case study for such fluidity in terms of political in as far as political game is concerned. But before we move to the next question, and I think
Can I,
of course, yes,
can I just
please,
one little bit? Look, the ANC also, some we shouldn't underestimate, it still controls the resources of the country, the policy making of the
true,
country.
yeah,
So it
absolutely,
has access to government money, even though there's little more, smaller and smaller stuff to access. It still control. It can still. South African politics is driven largely by patronage. You can give a T-shirt here, build a house there. Whatever the ANC
yeah,
does, appears on all SABC news channels. There's headlines and stuff. So the ANC still controls that. They can still control the narrative using state resources. And that's why other political parties are on the back foot. They have to find money elsewhere. There's more and more scrutiny on who funds political parties. It's going to be really, really hard for anybody else to raise funds to access the resources and the platforms. The ANC president can go all over the place as South Africa's president, but and speak ANC. He can go there as president of South Africa and speak ANC anywhere. And we are paying for it. It's hard to say, but you need to separate yourself.
I wanted to pick your brains on
Hmm.
the developments in the Democratic Alliance, especially
Right.
the events of the last 2 weeks or so. Uh, they have lost two high-profile leaders in the form of Kana Magashule and Miss Kopani, I think
Right.
Patricia Kopani from the Free State.
In Free State, yeah.
Yeah, and even though the likes of Helen Zille have tried to sort of downplay the significance of those two events, I mean, we were talking about the time to elections earlier. How do you think, how significant do you think these two events will be in their attempts or their efforts to try and appeal to more black voters? How important do you think those
Yeah.
two
Well, it's going to be.
resolutions are?
It is tough. I mean, in the same way that we have the shower of corruption hanging over the ANC, we have the shower of apparent racism or inability to work with black leaders in the DA. But we have to also appreciate that DA comes from a different political culture, tradition, history, and they've seen of themselves as liberal. If you listen to Tony Leon, is the best, I think, person to explain DA's ideology of a man must stand for himself or woman must stand for himself. We don't, but we have a very African culture, collectivist kind of approach to politics. And so when you have a black leader going there, this is my assumption, and from
Yeah.
many discussions, when you have a black leader comes there, no matter how angry you might be at the ANC, and you shouldn't go into the DA because you're angry at the ANC. You should go into the DA because you think it has a better option,
You
better
believe in
option for
what?
South Africa.
Yes.
Right, but given the history of South Africa, you still have this thing that we must work for the collective. It's very hard, for instance, to speak against BEE or government grants because you have relatives, friends, neighbors who have relatives, friends, other loved ones who belong. So when you come into the DA and say we need to push these things, you will obviously meet at some levels and people say no, people must stand up and work for themselves. And it's not necessarily racist. There's a political outview is we must create an economy that's strong so that people can set up and do stuff for themselves. And I totally agree with that. Personally, I think that we can't have an economy where most people rely on receiving free grants from the ANC, from the government all the time. So I think that, and when you're a minority in the DA at leadership level, having those conversations, you suddenly find yourself not being heard, or they don't hear you, or they don't understand. You must remember that South Africa is a complex country. Because of apartheid, we all grew up in racial cultural silos. We always talk about racism by white people, but there are colored people who are racist, who don't like black people. There are Indian people who don't like black people, but there are also black people who don't like the other. We don't talk about that. There are Muslims people who don't want to hear of South Africa. It's not racist, but I can tell you, there are people who just don't like black people, and those people are not white. Okay, there are kind of people who are unemployed who hate black people because they think it's because black people are taking all the jobs from in the so it's a complex country. So the whites also, many whites grew up in their own silo. We grew up in a silo. There's a colored silo, the Indian silo. So you suddenly find yourself starting to say, okay, how do we solve the problems of South Africa? We don't have the same socialization, and then the conversations become hard. So black people obviously become minority. They become isolated in those discussions. This is my assumption, of course. They
Yeah.
leave. And then the things, each time a black person leaves the DA with saying, "Oh, they are racist." I don't think so. I've spoken to John Steenhuisen. I've interviewed a number of
Dear
DA
leaders.
people. They're not. I once asked my man at an event, "Do you is Helen Zille racist?" He said, "No." But what do you want me to do? Okay, the things they don't speak the same political language. I don't think Helen Zille is racist. She's not. She's just a straight talking South African white lady who doesn't have necessarily your or somebody else's point of view. She says things as she sees them, because she believes in freedom of expression. She doesn't hate black people. But black people who've worked closely to her will tell you she's not racist. She just says things that people just want her to be racist. You know what I'm saying? I don't think Steenhuisen is racist. He's a cool South African dude who happens to be white, unfortunately. So he can't speak Soweto. He can't speak Mamelodi. He can't speak Google. So each time he opens his mouth, oh, white people, boom, boom. That's the problem with South Africa. We don't listen to each other. We look at the person's skin color, and we make assumptions about them too easily. So the TA, to answer your question, will have this difficulty of saying, but they didn't leave because they were racist. And it's even harder when, especially the lady from the Free State leaves and she says, well, we black people in these conversations, we're on the sidelines. She says something like that. We are not
Yeah.
listened to. I don't know if I do not believe that she's not listened to because she's black. I think she's not listened to because whatever proposal
What
she
she
put on the table
says.
didn't make sense to the other guy, not because she's black. I don't believe that the DA people says, you black, therefore we're not going to agree with that. That's nonsense. It's too easy, it's too shallow, it's too lazy to think of things that way. We come from different political cultures, and it's really hard to have conversations. You need somebody to say, guys, and this is a course I teach, by the way. You need to say, everything is not about you, everything is not about you. How do you come together and find some kind of accommodation in your strong view, come together, work together, find a middle ground. The minute you say you come in, you push one view, another one pushes their view, you're not going to meet each other halfway. So the DA, of course, has a problem because many South Africans don't analyze things to the depth. They just look at tweet and they judge you on the basis of a Twitter post or on a headline. They don't. If you send a 1,200 word article to many South Africans, they don't have time to read that. There's no attention span for that kind of thing. So they will make the judgment on you on the basis of. People think, for instance, the Minister of Finance raped somebody, or he did. We don't know. I don't want to judge him until, especially because we're heading towards elections. We don't know whether there's politics playing in here, because sometimes there are young women that have been known to be given money to make accusations at politicians. I'm not saying this is the case. I'm simply saying it's complex. Let's wait for the
There are those
facts to come
cases.
out. Yeah. Let's wait for the facts to come out. Let's not judge people on the basis of what the headline said or what the Twitter right said. You can't do that. It's complex. It doesn't mean therefore that the DA doesn't have a huge problem because it is this huge thing. People think
Cloud
each
hanging
time
over their heads
if I go
of
to the
racism.
DA as a black dude and I disagree with him or decide to leave, and then the world says, "Aha, he left." You see, there's no room for black people there because it fits on itself. Now. It's a beast that's beginning to feed on
It fits
itself.
into the narrative. But
Yeah,
now the politics is a number game.
right.
Do you think the DA is doing justice to themselves by constantly downplaying the this exodus of black leaders?
No, they're not. Definitely not. Look, there was a time when the DA, and I wrote an article about this. There wasn't a time when the DA was beginning to have the right conversations. It was hoping to become the next leader of the society, right? Especially when my and during a lot of people, we remember actually the election, the 2019, and I said to the DA, you shouldn't let go of my money because simply one conversations that are difficult. Some walk away. So some people who want to walk away. So some people who want to remain, move to the EFF, right? To the FF, right? They, right?
Yes.
It's normal that some people walk away, but you have to lose some in walk away, but you have to lose some in order to begin gaining. Conversations about BE, that sort of thing, and some people were not comfortable with that. They said, no, we're not going to vote for this guy. The ANC lied or whatever. Some people call my money or whatever. Some
Yeah.
people call my money ANC lied or whatever. But those days are gone. The DA now, if you listen to Steenhuisen, he no longer talks about replacing the ANC. I think he's come to accept that the DA will have to work in coalition with other parties because on its own, it's no longer going to be that replacement to the African nation because they don't have the numbers, they don't have the appeal to. They're not going to have the same appeal that they had with black people or that they were beginning to have while Mamani was there because they quickly ran back into their hole when they started losing numbers. I still don't think Mamani was a failure. I think Mamani was beginning to have those very big, difficult conversations about what it is. You can't have your cake and eat it. You can't remain the DA, the traditional DA, and still appeal to black people. Something has to give. And I think they were struggling to agree with what has to give. How much of our traditional DA
Support
identity
base.
do we give in order to attract more black people? But you can't remain that way and still expect people to come to you. That's why a lot of black people sometimes struggle in big corporates in South Africa because the corporate says, yeah, we'll appoint you, label you. Now we have a black chief executive, but the corporate culture remains the same. So you find yourself not able to operate, but they like to say, yeah, now we have a black CEO. But
Yeah.
no, something
But
has to change. You need to say, okay, this person comes from a different culture
how we need to do
in
things
whatever. I mean,
differently.
I'm talking about culture in a broad sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do we do things? How do we make sure that we create an enabling environment for this person to
To be
feel
able
that they
to
can operate and
operate.
contribute
Yeah.
in it? But if you say, yeah, you just like you come in, but this is how we do things here, okay? You can't suggest new things. There's no way you can survive there. And this is what happens a lot. People don't ask themselves, what do we give in order to change? You can't change while you remain the same. It's not possible.
Well,
Same thing to the idea.
we as we get closer, but
Yeah,
I think this just popped into my head now. There's a
right.
new political party that is, I'm not sure if it has been registered yet, but it's a political
Mm-hmm.
movement by
Is it Songezo Zibi?
Zengezo
Yeah,
platform,
the
Rivonia
Rivonia
something.
something.
Yes. What
Yes,
do you think are the chances of that, Rivonia? And I'm asking this because we spoke about Ghana, and he is
yeah,
rumored to be moving in that space. What do you think are his
right.
chances? I mean, we saw what's happening to Action
Mm,
in South Africa. KwaZulu
mm,
Natal branch is in disarray.
mm, mm,
Has got a lot of infighting in that region.
mm.
And I mean, where do you think Zongeso and his platform are going to go, knowing all they know about politics in
Well,
South Africa?
I wrote an article. I didn't mention him, but I mentioned this. I discussed this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And my latest article on 2024 speaks to this. Look, the thing is, over since 1994, we've had a lot of people either branching out of the ANC or coming out of nowhere to start their own political parties. People forget that the African National Congress came into power in 94 on the basis of massive support from South Africans. People came from the end conscription campaign, all sorts of NGOs, obviously with the Communist Party, labor unions. They said we have one enemy, despite all of our other differences. The enemy is apartheid. We're going to stand behind Mandela's ANC, and that's what. And the ANC has been supported, obviously, by the labor movements and other people. So that emotional support has remained for a long time. Now, anybody who comes in alone, the NC is not alone. The NC on its own would not be that strong party. Okay, if you come alone and you think you're going to be the next big guy, it's a road already traveled by too many others. So long as we will come out with a number with 10, 15 votes, and I don't know where it's going to lead. That's my view. My view is that South Africans need to unite. That's my view. South Africans need to come together despite their differences, and said we had post-colonial, we had post-apartheid, we need post-ANC. If you solely on his own with political party will make all the noise he wants, he's not going to get there. You know, I see Sengo is of course very much embraced by the defend our democracy campaigners, but the defend our democracy campaigners is led by ANC stalwarts.
Yes.
You know,
and they're embracing him as well.
Yeah, they love him. Yeah, all those people like what's his Cheryl Carollas and the pastor who was him, and all those guys. But they are the old aging community. They're embracing him. He feels good. It's good for him. But I think that that's not the solution for South Africa, and I don't think that he will get he will become the next president. Between now and the next elections, a lot of movement is going to happen in the South African political space. South Africans need to get together, not around an individual. We don't need a messiah anymore. We've tried messiahs for too long. They don't work. South Africans must come together around an ideal. What kind of South Africa do they want, and how do they build that? The minute you say we're going to build a structure around Solly or Lefa or Lebo, then we're losing it. It's not about an individual. It's bigger than any one person.
The last question, Mr. Moeng. You touched on the storms around the finance minister. We've got a threat of greylisting going on due to lack, I think, or lacks in terms of our regulatory authority.
Financial.
Yes, around the funding for terrorism activities, money laundering, and all those other things. And on the one hand, you've got Minister of Finance who now finds himself in this sort of cloud. The allegations of sexual harassment, I think, against him. What do you think this, the impact of this on us as a country, and on our drive to get investment into the country? Where do you think this?
No, it's huge. It's massive. I think the minister must realize that the battle South Africa is facing is bigger than any one individual. I do not think, I have not made a decision. I can't on the basis on whether or not he did what he's alleged to have done. But that's going to be a long process. And while that process takes place, a lot of things are going to be said. All the perceptions around South Africa are not getting better. South Africa, if I were him, I would say, for the sake of South Africa, I'm going to stand aside and fight this thing. And hopefully Ramaphosa, because he's still the president, will replace him with somebody a bit more credible. We need to start sending clear messages to the world, and we're not. And the threat of grey-listed is a real one, because we've seen a lot of the Guptas and the Zumas, they've taken a lot of money out of this country from what we've seen. And even the banks have not stopped them. I teach online, I keep saying, I teach online and I get paid through my Standard Bank account, okay? And it's small amount. Nobody makes a lot of money out of teaching. When that small amount goes into my Standard Bank account, I get letters, forms to complete. What is this money for? Well, guys, just teach. These guys moved millions. There's no indications that the banks in South Africa stopped them. The audit profession in South Africa So the
Right.
audit, the business accountants in South Africa, the audit professions, the banks in South Africa, they've allowed a lot of stuff to happen that is hurting South Africa. So that's why there's now suspicion that we are a haven for money launderers. Maybe there's a lot of money that's gone out to finance ISIS. Who knows? Because we don't control it. You just need to give somebody at Home Affairs or at the strategic department 5,000 rands, just 5,000 rands, and they will do anything for you. And that's the problem we have. So we have to be really, really, really careful, because if you get grey listed, it means that we cannot be trusted anymore by the international system. It means that we're going to be under a lot more scrutiny. Investors who are reputation conscious are going to be shy of putting money into South Africa, because we can't be trusted. You can't, and America will come back and say we can't have our companies running our money through your system, because we don't know if it's funding all these terrorists that we're trying to find elsewhere. And who would blame them if they did that? So I hope that the Minister of Finance manages to, for the sake of South Africa, stand aside, because it's not going to be resolved tomorrow. It's going to be, if it's a court case, it's going to run for. The more it's protracted, the more it's not allowing South Africa space to breathe. To say no, don't worry, he must step aside. Let the country heal. Let the country show the world that it can still bring things under control. But the banks, the audit professions, the accountants in business South Africa must tell us why they have been quiet all this time, because they have allowed South Africa to be here. They're making money. I see Standard Bank, all these banks, you look at their profits over the past year. They're making good money. But they've allowed millions to run through the systems without saying stop. That's not right, because they were getting commissions and fees from those. Exactly.
Yeah.
So we are messed up. South Africa is so much painful, so hurt. Something has to give.
Well, to minister's credit, I think yesterday there were media reports that said that he has committed himself to step down as and when the charges are brought up against him.
Sure.
But
Correct.
until that time comes, I think we'll just have to wait and see, because I mean we know that at that point he will be forced by the ANC rules, step aside rules, to step aside. But for now, it would appear that he's determined to continue with business as usual.
Yeah, I mean that's assuming that Biggie Taylor doesn't make sure he doesn't get charged.
I don't want to go there.
I don't want to complicate the conversation, but I mean, look,
no.
he's a powerful minister in the president's cabinet. Biggie Taylor is also there. Biggie Taylor is with all the other stuff. Biggie Taylor can simply say, no, that file, I want to see it before it goes over there. You can do that.
Mr. Moeng.
Sorry, we are messed up. Okay.
Thank you very much for making time for us. Before, I think about sometime last month, one of the podcasters was hit with about $500,000 lawsuit.
Having done what?
Was hit with a $500,000 lawsuit for the discussion that was taken. JJ Tabani. You know JJ Tabani.
No.
Yeah.
JJ Tabani. Yes, I know. Yeah.
JJ said things about Trevor Manuel and other leaders.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and so we better be careful at times.
Yeah, you do have litigious people out there, but a lot of everything we're discussing is out there already.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Solly, for
pleasure.
Making time.
It's been a pleasure to talk to you, Lebo.
Same here.
Thanks for not eating me alive.
I would not have dared, because I really wanted us to sort of talk to these issues and be able to give South Africans far deeper than what the headlines are about.
Yeah, I love that.
Headlines.
I really love that. I think if I were to make an appeal to South Africans, please read, connect the dots, learn to connect the dots. The fact that we don't connect the dots, you end up with a criminal coming up, disappearing here, and you praise them, you sing them, but these are the people who hate South Africa, and that's what we do all the time, because we don't understand our own history, we don't connect the dots.
Absolutely, because look, ours is, as a South Africa, we need investment. And investment communities need a politically stable environment where to put their money.
Correct.
They need policy certainty. And that's the only way in which we can be able to create employment. We can be able to halve inequality and eradicate poverty. And
there's got to be, and we need a country where there are consequences. You see, In South Africa, you can do anything, get away with it,
We need a country where
and,
there are
there are no
consequences.
consequences. Yeah,
And for
that's the
me,
problem.
that is indeed the bigger picture. And
Yeah.
it's been a pleasure to have you, Solly.
Thank you.
Have
Thank you very
yourself a
much.
lovely afternoon.
Okay. And you.
All right.
Cheers. All
Cheers.
right.
Bye. Thank you for watching that, guys. And look, I really had a good time talking to Mr. Moeng. And if you enjoyed the video as much as I enjoyed the discussion with him, please remember to subscribe on the channel. Help us reach that 1,000 mark. It's very, very important for us to reach that 1,000 subscription mark. And like the video.